First of all, I think the bird itself has to have the pedigree behind it before we ever look at anything else. If it's necessary for your distance pigeons, I listened to yesterday's correctly what they're saying. If the birds haven't got that bloodlines in them in the first place, it's very hard then expecting them to win. We look for consistency. 400 from the, we talk from 400.
Yeah, from middle distance to long distance on the day. You're 5 hours through to your 9.5 hour.
Oh, I think you look at the previous performance of those pigeons, leading up to those races, your training, your management. I think your management's probably one of the biggest things in your backyard. A lot of people don't put as much emphasis on as they should. That's your feeding, training, do you overtrain? Probably most flyers do these days. They think that the reward is putting them in the back of the car and taking them up the road, and often it's maybe detrimental to your pigeon. Making sure the bird's healthy, they're flying around the roof looking well. And I said for the distance races, those birds have to have the background in them. When I say that, I'm starting to get a bit worried now because the birds in the, this year in the VHA and the Union were, a lot of them had Euro blood in them, so they're starting to, maybe we think that they won't fly those distances, but maybe they can. We're probably a bit more the pioneer flyers compared to overseas in Europe, and we're probably a bit silly in Australia. We try them out in the distance, and some of those birds are actually doing it. So maybe in the future, your hermit coisters, your Koopmans and pigeons that we all think are only middle distance pigeons, maybe we may find blending them into our own hard day pigeons. We may start finding pigeons that are going to do it more on the day, better velocities, faster velocities. I can only relate to Victoria. I'm sure David will mention this to John. Years past, when I first started in the 70s, most races in the 500, 600 were 1 second day. These days, if you haven't got a pigeon on the night, basically not going to win the Fed. It's as simple as that. So this year in the VPU and the VHA and the VPU in particular, we had all-day flies. Normally back in the 80s and 90s, I can tell you now, there's no one home we wouldn't have got those birds, leading birds through late in the morning. And this year, a number of us were getting them at sunset, 20 minutes into the dark, and we had between 4 and 10 birds in those Broken Hill, 450 miles, Fowler's Gap 500, Carrington 500, Dibbarburra 600, they were home on the night, the winning birds. And on conditions that you would normally thought the birds would not be there on the day. So our birds are getting faster. And I know when I was in UK, I visited Jeff Cooper. That was one of the comments that Jeff said, that his birds were all Dewert background, from Emile Dewert. The birds that he was looking for at the time weren't your extreme distance birds. He was looking for birds that could fly the distance but could fly it faster, because he felt that in the future you'd have to have birds that were actually going to do a better velocity than the ones that were doing it yesterday. So I think that's what we may be looking at in the future.
Thanks, John. So you don't sort of close yourself in relation to thinking of a middle to long distance 1 day pigeon as a family type. You're more open-minded to that now in relation to those shorter distance pigeons being more explosive? Yeah. Yeah, David?
Well, further to what you were saying there, John, I did one of these probably 12, 14 years ago, I guess, Greg. You got me over there and we sat up there together and did what we did. And I said of that thing, in my opinion, if I was living here, I'd be putting Hoobans into your long distance pigeons. And I nearly got thrown out of the joint and said, that'll ruin them. I said, because that's going to put a little bit of strength and speed into them, and I think you'll fly a bit quicker on the 5s. So, following on what you were saying, we're on a bit. That's exactly what you've got to do, in my opinion, to keep them going up there.
Yeah, sure. What do you actually look for in a good pigeon, David? Have you got a selection criteria?
Yeah,
like size, balance, shape, feather, bone, all
performance.
That sort of... Performance number one.
All three. Performance, really. They've got to be winning pigeons. Sure, you can skip a generation when you try and breed something for stock. But then, obviously, once you get them in your hand, there's nothing that's better than a nicely balanced pigeon. A pigeon that's not heavy, even if you pick it up in the stock loft, it still feels like you could race tomorrow.
So you look for the buoyancy in the pigeon and the light
buoyancy and the
bone?
balance.
Yep.
And everyone likes a nice wing. I like a nice wing. I'm not those really fat flights that the old original Jansons had. I like a nice wing on them and a bit of intelligence about them. I don't go overboard with the eyesight. I think it's a good thing, but maybe I just never really learnt it. I just like a nice, when you look at them, they look intelligent. They don't look like a dill. And performance again, and off we go. There's nothing better than winning a good race with a beautiful handling pigeon, but it's as much fun winning a good race with a shocking one.
Well said.
You're there to,
Well said.
you're there to win the Melbourne Cup, not the Melbourne Show, in my opinion.
So for you, it's performance results first before
That's
anything
it.
else is looked at.
That's it.
Okay. Ross Chapman, what do you look for in a good pigeon? And you've had quite a few of them over the years.
Well, firstly, I don't think I'm really qualified to be sitting up with these chaps that they fly the longer distance birds better than mine. But what I would look for is, I just like a pigeon that feels nice in your hand. And I think over the years you just handle pigeons, and the one that feels nice in your hand, you're sort of halfway there. I'm not saying there's not good pigeons that feel shit house or bad pigeons that feel nice, but generally over the years you sort of know what you want in your own backyard. I don't like big pigeons, I don't like pigeons with keels. Maybe that's because I live down on the coast, so mainly I've got to concentrate on the harbour line, and I find the smaller birds seem to be able to fly better for me. But the bottom line is, whether it's a pedigree or not, you have to have good pigeons. There's no substitute for good pigeons. If you've got a slow dog out there, it's a slow dog. It doesn't matter what you do with it, it's still slow. And pigeons are the same in my opinion. Grant Patterson said it to me just recently, there's a chasm between a good pigeon and a bad one. So if you're running around just getting moderate pigeons, you're going to be a moderate pigeon flyer. Sorry, that's just the way I see it. Hand over to John.
Hand that one back.
Not working properly?
Hand that one back.
Yeah.
Is this one?
Yeah, that's good. Is this one okay? You hear me? Okay. Now over to John Van Beers. John, the question is, John, what do you look for in a good pigeon? What do you look for in a good pigeon? And you've had plenty of them.
The only thing that counts in my loft is results, and more results. I don't have a preference for one winner over the other. I've been fortunate to win the shortest races and the longest races, and historically there's the same pigeons in my loft. So, So consequently, I don't go in the loft and say, "Oh, you're a beautiful pigeon and you're going to be a champ." All I do is, well, what are you off? Your parents won a fed place, or your grandparents, and so on and so on. All right, you're off of all of them. You've got the blood. You've got a chance. But having said that, even my really, really good pairs breed 90% rubbish. You know, if I've got a good pair and I get, if I get a really good pair, I leave them together. And if they breed me 6 or 7 fed places in 5 years, I've taken at least 30 to 40 young'uns off them, and only 6 of them are any good. So I don't personally think I've got the ability to say, well, just because it's off the good pair, it's going to be good. It still has to have the ability itself. And when you said, what do I look for, that performance, but also a little bit of constitution. And at the start of the year, I'm sorry if I'm waffling on, but at the start of the year, I go and I keep lots of pigeons, by the way. I fill 300 rings most years. So, lots of pigeons to look at. And when I go in the loft at the start of the year, I look at it and I think, geez, I've got 300 chances. After 2 or 3 tosses, there's 20 that are no good. After 2 or 3 races, there's 50 that are no good. By the time we get to 300 mile, half of them have got a chance. By the time I get to 400 mile, I'm down to 50 or 60 that I reckon have got chances. And it's purely a selection process. Sorry for what.
It's all right, mate.
Thank you for that. Is there any questions from the floor in relation to this particular issue? What do you look for in a good pigeon? Has anyone got a question from the floor around that? Yes, Michael?
G'day, my name's Michael, mate. I've only been flying for a couple of years. When you said you breed 300 pigeons and then you lose 20 tosses and races, there are so many factors govern what happens outside from you breed them in the loft, you chuck them in the truck. What percentage of the factors you go say, okay, they get hawked, they get disorientated, because when they get spooked, one would assume they go the other way, not this way. What factor do you put in that when you're breeding? How many are you going to lose?
You mean percentagely?
Yeah.
What you're going to lose percentagely? And that question's
So
to
you
John
say
Van Beers.
Say you're 300 and you get, say, 20 good ones.
What percentage of your pigeons would you start with each year would you consider to be good? If you start with 300, how many would you expect to
All
be?
mine are all good.
They're all good, okay. Until you start putting them to the test.
At the end of the year, historically, I do win a lot of federation positions. Nobody will deny that. I probably win more than most, but remembering I start with a lot. So out of those 300, I might get 15 to 20 federation positions, but in a lot of cases, I do get multiple drops. Not always, but for example, the last 500 mile I won wasn't a gut buster. It was only 11 and a half hours. I got 4 together. Now, I consider all 4 of them good. But if I take an average year, like this year wasn't an average year, it was a horrible race season, I reckon I've got maybe 10 or 11 good ones, and the rest are just passengers, if I can put it that way.
What do you class
I'm not saying they haven't all got the ability to breed.
Yeah.
Like the 4 pigeons I put in here, this sale, not one of them did I clock. There's not a hope in hell of you getting one of mine that I've clocked, because I want it.
Yeah.
But these are brothers and sisters. Now, I'm not saying they won't breed, but I personally want to breed off the winners myself. I'm not a dealer, I don't sell, I've never had a sale. So all my stock loft is full of pigeons that I have raced and won fed places with. And so consequently, to answer your question, if I get 10 or 15 what I think are good, I'm doing well. My aim every year is to find 8 pair of new stock birds. I've got 50 single pens in my loft at home, and I aim to replace that stock loft every 7 to 8 years maximum, preferably quicker.
Yeah.
So that there's not too many old hens in the loft, and the ones that don't breed, even though they're winners, they go out, and this year's winners will go in.
What do you class as a horrible season?
What do you class as a horrible season?
Horrible season, massive losses, unexplained losses. We hardly raced on a Saturday. One day we'd race on a Tuesday, one day we'd race on a Wednesday, then we'd race on a Friday. There was no pattern. It was very hard to have any continuity. You know, I race mine extremely sparingly. Like mine would be lucky to get 5 races a year. Lucky. So consequently, you know, I would have as many as 4 or 5 teams by the time we start racing. Of 50, our team is 50 in my lot, because we can send 50. So, you know, you'd send 50 this week, lose 10, that's okay. But then you wouldn't race for 2 weeks. Well, I'm planning on getting the next 50 away. And then we'd have 2 races on the one day and all that sort of thing. So it wasn't an enjoyable season. Finished off by the rather terrible last weekend. You all know what happened the last weekend.
Is that weather inconsistency though?
Okay, we'll keep moving along. There's some interesting points to come out of that. The emphasis on young stock hens and being mindful of keeping that in your stock loft. And we probably all agree for every 100 pigeons you breed, maybe you're looking at 3%, 3 real good ones from 100. Would that be fair? Yeah? Yeah. What's good? Results. Results.
Until
Yeah.
well, even the winners don't breed winners.
Exactly.
So-
Exactly. All right. No, that's good. That's excellent. Now, if we can move on to training and your training methods, and if there's anything that you do with point of difference there that might give you an edge competitively. John, would you like to talk about your training methods? Are you a hard trainer, or you take it a bit easy on them?
At the start of the year, I train south, down towards Geelong, for those who know the area. So I'm going the opposite way to our way we race. I do that because I live in the north. I have resident falcons at my place. Not that they worry me, they're part of the environment, but if I go north towards Seymour, Shepparton Way, they're going to get knocked around. The last thing you want is your birds to get knocked around when they're only babies. It's stress. It's more the mental stress probably on pigeons rather than the hooks. Look, at the end of the day, falcons can only hit so many pigeons. Probably only one, but it's probably the mental stress that they do. So we go south.